"This check is fake," Tyler, the HOA worker, shouted, tearing my $47,000 check in half, right in front of me. He was smug, acting like he owned the place, but I stayed calm, too calm. The lobby fell silent. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, full of judgment. But what Tyler didn't know was that his little performance was about to backfire. I glanced at the clock, just minutes until 4:00 p.m., when the real story would unfold. He thought he had the upper hand, but he had no idea who he was really messing with. Tyler, the smug HOA worker, leaned over the counter holding the torn pieces of my check like a badge of honor. His eyes flicked between the shredded paper and me, as if expecting panic. Instead, I stood tall, unfazed. He was enjoying every second of this, thinking I was just some random homeowner who wouldn't fight back. He shoved the pieces toward me, sneering. "You really thought we wouldn't catch this? A settlement check from a company no one's heard of? Fraud's what this is." Carol, the HOA manager, appeared behind him, arms crossed, her eyes already sizing me up. "Is this true?" she asked, her tone dismissive. Her judgment was already made. She didn't even glance at my ID or check the company's legitimacy. She just assumed I was guilty. I didn't have time for this. My hand twitched toward my pocket, feeling the weight of my phone. 4:00 p.m. was fast approaching, and I had something they didn't expect. The calm in me was just a mask for what I was about to do. I wasn't just a homeowner. I was the one in charge here now, and Tyler, he had no idea what he'd just started. Tyler's smirk didn't fade. Instead, he leaned in closer, his eyes scanning me like I was the villain in some bad movie. He wasn't even trying to hide his disdain now. I had barely processed the humiliation of the check being torn apart when he started speaking again, his voice louder this time, drawing the attention of more people in the lobby. "This is textbook scammer behavior," he said, shaking the pieces of my torn check in the air. "We've seen it all before. Shows up right before closing with a phony check that we can't verify." My fingers tightened around the edge of the counter, but I kept my voice steady. "The check is legitimate. You're making a mistake, Tyler." His eyes flicked to Carol, who stood with her arms folded watching me like I was the one causing a scene. Her expression was unreadable, but her silence said everything. She wasn't going to defend me. In fact, she was already turning away from me, dismissing me entirely. "I need to see some identification." "You think we can just let you waltz in here with a fake check?" Tyler pressed, his tone condescending. He glanced around at the other HOA members in the lobby, who were now watching the scene unfold with rapt attention. A few exchanged glances, their whispers, making it clear they were all too happy to see me in this position. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but I didn't let it show. I reached into my bag and pulled out my ID and bank statements. Tyler glanced at them with a sneer before handing them back without even reading them properly. "This won't be enough," he said, shaking his head. "You've got 3 minutes. Either prove this check is real, or I'm calling corporate security." It was like watching a show unfold. Only I wasn't the audience. I was the star, but not in the way I wanted. As I handed over my documents, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass window nearby. A man in his late 30s, dressed in a sharp suit, standing completely still, surrounded by a room of people who saw me as nothing more than an inconvenience. But this wasn't just about the check anymore. It was about control. It was about showing them that they weren't the ones with the power here. Tyler, still standing too close, leaned in and began taking photos of my documents with his phone. He wasn't trying to hide it. The flash went off repeatedly as he snapped images. The way he treated me like I was nothing more than a criminal only made the situation worse. I cleared my throat. "What are you doing? You didn't think we'd just take your word for it, did you?" he said, still snapping photos. A sinking feeling dropped in my stomach. This wasn't just harassment. This was an outright violation of my privacy. I had already presented everything they asked for. It was enough. But Tyler's refusal to even look at it with an open mind was maddening. "Enough," I said, my voice colder than I felt. "You're crossing a line, Tyler." He ignored me. His attention was on the photos, zooming in on the documents as if he were looking for any excuse to keep pushing. Carol stood back, arms still crossed, looking like she was waiting for me to break. I could see it in her eyes. She had already decided I was guilty no matter what. I could feel the weight of the room on me. Their judgment hung in the air, thick and suffocating. My phone buzzed in my pocket again, a reminder that I had a meeting in just a few minutes. A meeting that would change everything. I stood a little straighter, deliberately ignoring the mounting pressure. This wasn't my first rodeo. The moment Carol opened her mouth, I knew something bigger was coming. "Tyler," she said, not looking at me, "I think it's time we call corporate. We don't have time to waste." I could see Tyler grinning, finally feeling like he'd cornered me. His victory was short-lived, though, because Carol wasn't going to let me get away with this. Yeah, we'll call corporate, Tyler added, his eyes glinting with triumph. We'll see what they say when they hear about this fraudulent check. The next thing I knew, Tyler had snatched the shredded pieces of my check from the counter and tossed them into the trash bin with a finality that made my stomach drop. That was the moment I knew I'd lost control of the situation. Did you really have to do that? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Do what Tyler asked, looking at me with a smug grin. This is fraud, buddy. You're lucky we're even giving you this much time. But then something snapped inside me. I'd been patient enough. I'll be right back, I said, turning and heading for the door. Where are you going? Carol called after me, a little too eagerly. I'm going to make a call, I said, stepping out into the hallway. My phone buzzed again, the 400 p.m. reminder flashing on the screen. I dialed the number, taking a deep breath. The calm I was forcing myself to maintain was slipping, but I couldn't afford to lose it now. As I stood by the wall outside the HOA office, I heard the sound of footsteps approaching. Tyler came out, his phone pressed to his ear. You can't just leave, sir. We need your cooperation, he called, his voice full of authority that felt fake. I turned to face him, keeping my voice level. You're the one who needs to cooperate, Tyler. Just then, I saw a couple of security officers in the distance walking toward the office. You can't force me to stay here. You've violated my privacy, and you've treated me like a criminal. Sir, one of the officers said, his hand resting lightly on his belt. We need you to come back inside. This is a serious situation. No, it's not, I replied, my voice firm. You're just doing your job, but this isn't fraud. He hesitated. We're following orders. Then get the real facts, not just what Tyler's telling you, I shot back, turning to walk back into the office. I walked into the HOA office with a new sense of urgency. As I stood there facing Tyler and Carol, my phone buzzed again. The meeting was in just minutes. I could feel the energy in the room shift. Something was about to change. But as I approached the counter, I saw the one thing I hadn't expected. Carol was on the phone, speaking urgently. She was panicking. Yeah, I'm sending someone over to handle this. We need to shut this down now. The check's in question. My heart beat faster. They had no idea who they were messing with. They thought they had control, but they didn't know the power I had over their future. This was the point of no return. Tyler stood there, smug as ever, watching me with a self-righteous grin. Behind him, Carol, the HOA manager, folded her arms, clearly unconcerned. They had no idea how much they'd just screwed up. The moment the security officers walked in, the room tensed. I saw the change in Carol's face as she took in the newcomers. They weren't from the HOA, they were from Meridian Tech Solutions. She hesitated, but Tyler kept talking, his voice growing louder. What's this? Tyler asked, trying to assert some form of control. Who are these people, Alex? The lead security officer flashed his badge, stepping forward. I'm with Meridian Tech Solutions. Dr. John Harris here is with our company, and we're handling an issue you've just escalated. Carol's eyes went wide. What's going on? She was starting to lose her grip. I'm here to make sure you understand the consequences of your actions, Alex said, giving Carol a pointed look. It was happening. I wasn't just a random homeowner anymore. This was about to get much bigger than Tyler could imagine. Tyler wasn't backing down. You can't just come in here and... Actually, I can, I interrupted, pulling out my phone and dialing a number I'd been waiting for. The moment it connected, I spoke. This is Dr. John Harris, Chief Technology Officer at Meridian Tech Solutions. We're in the middle of an acquisition of Premier National Bank, and what's happening here right now isn't just a mistake, it's a liability. The room froze. The live stream viewers, now over 400, were tuning in for what came next. I could see Tyler's face twist in confusion, then disbelief. Carol's confidence was completely gone. You don't know who you're dealing with, I said calmly, my voice steady. I'm in charge of overseeing this acquisition, and you've just jeopardized everything. That $47,000 check you tore up, it's my signing bonus for completing the merger. Tyler opened his mouth to argue, but I didn't let him. You've just destroyed a legitimate corporate compensation check. And instead of processing it like a professional, you've just created a lawsuit for your company. It hit them. Hard. Carol's face drained of color, and Tyler looked like he was seeing the walls close in on him. The reality of the situation was sinking in. I wasn't finished yet. This is live. I've got over 400 people watching this unfold, and I'm documenting everything for the corporate review. You've made it public, now the consequences are coming. Alex stepped forward, his voice firm. Corporate security has already flagged this. We've been monitoring the live stream. The damage has been done. This is a public relations disaster, and now it's going to be a legal one. Tyler grabbed the torn pieces of my check from the trash and looked at them, his panic growing. This can't be happening. We were just following protocol, I repeated, letting the word hang in the air. Your protocol doesn't account for treating people with respect, does it? The tension in the room was suffocating, but it didn't matter anymore. The tables had turned. Tyler and Carol were outmatched. This wasn't just about a mistaken check. It was about a company failing to recognize their own discrimination. Tyler's shaky hands couldn't hide his panic. We didn't know who you were, he said, but it was weak, and it didn't matter anymore. I nodded slowly. And that's exactly why you're both about to face the consequences. Alex turned to the other security officers, signaling them to begin their formal actions. Tyler, Carol, you're both suspended effective immediately. We'll be handling this internally, and corporate will follow up with the next steps. I kept my composure as I walked out of the HOA office, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the empty hall. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from my son Jordan. Good luck, Dad. The weight of his words hit me just as I stepped out the door, but it wasn't over. This wasn't just about clearing my name, it was about something much bigger. As I walked away, I could already hear the voices of accountability gaining strength behind me. This wasn't just my fight anymore. The wheels of change were in motion, and there was no stopping them now. As I stepped out of the HOA office, I felt a quiet satisfaction wash over me. The battle wasn't over, but I had just flipped the script. The tension that had gripped my chest moments ago was replaced by calm. My phone buzzed with a message from Jordan. Good luck, Dad. It made me smile, his simple support meaning more than I could say. The live stream of the incident had gone viral, and comments were pouring in. People who'd experienced similar mistreatment were sharing their stories, creating a digital movement. The hashtag number, HOA accountability, was climbing, and I knew this was bigger than just me. What started as a personal fight had grown into something much more significant. I had turned a humiliating moment into a message of change. I took a deep breath and headed toward my car. This was just the beginning. The work to fix things wasn't over. The community was speaking up, and now the responsibility was on me, to push for the right kind of reform. As I got into my car, my phone rang again. It was Thomas from corporate headquarters. Dr. Harris, we've seen the fallout, and we're moving forward with a response. We've already put the staff involved on suspension. There will be an internal investigation and immediate corporate action. I nodded. Good. Make sure it's swift. Thomas continued. We're also launching a full audit of Premier National Bank's policies and practices, starting with a mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all branches. The weight of the situation started to feel real. What had begun as a single-person struggle against injustice was now a company-wide issue, one that would impact thousands. But I wasn't done yet. Make sure the actions are public, I added. I want transparency. If we're going to change things, everyone needs to see how it's done. Thomas assured me that they were already planning a public statement. Legal teams were drafting the details, and soon the entire bank would be under scrutiny for its discriminatory practices. I could already feel the wheels of change turning. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Media coverage picked up, and the bank's crisis became a major talking point. The live stream, watched by thousands, had made this a public affair. The comments and reactions were overwhelming. People were outraged, but they were also inspired by the fact that someone had stood up for what was right. But then came the twist, the part I hadn't seen coming. The next day, a local news station aired a segment about the ongoing corporate changes. When the camera cut to the boardroom, my son Jordan appeared. His face, once on Premier National's marketing materials, now carried a much deeper meaning. My mom taught me that respect should be universal, he said in the interview, speaking confidently about how important it was to treat everyone with dignity. His words hit me harder than I expected. All the work, all the patience, it wasn't just for me. It was for him, for the future. Seeing him speak so confidently about equality gave me hope that maybe, just maybe, things were changing for the better. The corporate response didn't stop there. The bank announced that they had secured a settlement with their corporate partners, and steps were being taken to restructure. Legal consequences for the discrimination were already being processed. Tyler and Carol's actions had set off a chain of events they couldn't undo. Their careers were ruined, and the bank was paying the price for its poor judgment. And then, the final blow. The news report revealed that Meridian Tech Solutions, the company I worked for, had completed its acquisition of Premier National Bank, and I was now overseeing the integration process. The check that Tyler had destroyed was my signing bonus. The irony was almost too much to bear. The company was forced into a public apology, promising comprehensive reforms, including diversity audits and new employee training. Tyler and Carol were both dismissed, their actions now infamous. The public outrage was enough to force change, and it was clear discrimination like this would no longer be tolerated. As I sat in my office that afternoon, my phone rang again. It was Thomas from corporate. "We've secured the settlement, Dr. Harris. Everything's in motion. We're implementing new policies to make sure this doesn't happen again." I looked out the window, watching the city hum with life. The fight wasn't over. The work to repair the damage and rebuild trust was just beginning. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could take a breath. The road to change had begun, and I knew it wouldn't be easy, but it was worth it.